Hi, my name is Luis Piluso. This is my recording studio, El Capitan Studio, and we're here in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I want to show you this modern hybrid production studio. This is quite different to other recording studios because we do lots of different things. We produce bands and solo artists. We also do compositions for jingles, TV, and cinema. We have a YouTube channel that is this one that I invite you to subscribe because it's new. But we also have another YouTube channel in Spanish that is almost 80,000 people big, called El Capitan Studio, like this studio. We also do lots of work for abroad. We work with lots of American musicians and we produce that way. So I'm quite used to working on my own here in the studio. I have my synths, I have my guitars, I have my bass, my drums, my piano, everything, and I want to go into detail of how I set up the studio because that might be helpful for you, and how it grew over the years and how I have everything working at the same time. We're going to talk about the synths, we're going to talk about software, we're going to talk about guitars, basses, and acoustic treatment, monitors, everything. So I hope you really enjoy this studio tour 2023. So this video is going to be quite long, so I'll leave you in the timeline of the different chapters of this episode, so you can jump straight to what you're interested in. Also, I encourage you to leave me a comment with anything you think that would be a good idea for a video. So maybe if you see a piece of gear you're interested in and I don't have a video yet, you can ask for it underneath in the comment box, so I'll see you there. Okay, so let's start with the computers. My main computer in the studio is a Mac M1 MacBook Pro. It's 16 gigabytes and 512 gigabytes of memory. It's an incredibly fast computer. I used to use Hackintosh before, and I used it for like 7 years, something like that. It was quite good. There was a time that Hackintosh made sense. I think it doesn't make sense anymore. You're stuck to the system that you install in it, and any kind of updates kind of damages everything else. So I was having problems every year that something would update that I didn't give it permission, and suddenly half of my plugins would disappear, and I would be like 1 week reinstalling, and I'm talking original plugins with licenses and everything, but it was a total nightmare. So last year I got the M1 and it works perfectly fine, especially for video, and when you're mixing like 100 tracks and with plugins on it, it works really, really well. So the other thing I want to recommend is that unfortunately the MacBook Pro only comes with 3 USB ports, and it's a USB-C or a Thunderbolt 4. So I have to plug in 32 USB ports into my computer, and I only have 3. So I've been trying out all of this like cheaper USB hubs, and I wasn't getting any good results because I couldn't have everything connected at the same time and have the same amount of power going to each device. So what I ended up doing is investing a little bit more and buying one of those USB docks that you plug it into a power supply, 12 volts, and I can have 16 USB ports connected to only one of the computer. I received one last week. I already plugged it in and everything's working great. All my synths are appearing in the computer and it has enough power. Same for the audio interfaces. I'm still waiting for my next hub to arrive. So once I have that for my solid discs, everything is going to work much better. But I'm still happy. This is working really well. My concept behind the studio is that I have everything connected at the same time all the time. So whenever I want to open up a synth, or I want to drag a Midi to any of my synths, or just plug in a guitar, I have everything pre-routed and I have a template that makes me waste no time at all. So I waste no time at all, because if I have to waste time plugging in instruments and dialing in the sounds, I'd rather open up a plugin. So my hybrid method is that even though it might take a little bit more time to use the hardware, I try to minimize that amount of time to the minimum and be efficient and have the best sound quality possible. So that will be really interesting once we get to the audio interface, because I'm going to explain how I have everything connected, which is going to be very useful. So let's talk about my interfaces. I have my main interface is a Orion 32 Plus from Antelope Audio. It's a great interface for the money. Antelope is well known for its great converters. It has a great patch bay. The only thing that I would say is kind of crappy is the driver quality. especially because if you are swapping sample rates between sessions, it might start farting the sound. So you sometimes have to reboot the interface. But apart from that, it offers 32 in and outs analog. It also offers like the same amount or more digital connections, which is great. I connected via aggregate device. In Mac, I connected to my other interface, which is a Focusrite Clarett Plus 8 Pre, which is it's back here. It's a great interface for the money. It's like between the Scarlett and the Red series from them. So it's really, really solid and really good right in the middle. It has great preamps. The conversion quality is quite good. It sounds really nice, but it's not a transparent converter as the Antelope is, which I like because I get the possibility to have two different flavors. And it also has the preamps are completely transparent as Focusrite is accustomed to. It has a air function, which allows you to have like a bit more top end and a different impedance to the microphone. And that makes it sound like completely different, and I really like it. It's quite subtle. It makes it sound a little bit different. It's quite subtle, but it's quite agreeable as well. So this allows me to have like 40 or 48 channels completely analog of inputs, which I love because I like to have everything connected, like I said before. All my synths. This studio is completely different than a traditional recording studio because we have instruments, and I really take priority that all my drums that are in the next room, the piano, the synths, and everything is connected all the time, and I'm just one click away from using and recording it. So the beauty you see right here is my console. It's a Tascam M320B from the early 80s. It's a 20 input console, so it has 20 preamps. I have 12 of them connected via a tie line to the live room next door. So I could record a band or drums, piano, vocals, sax, a small orchestral piece or something, and use 12 inputs next door. And then I have some synths that are permanently connected to the console as well. So the first 16 channels of my recording interface. So my recording interface is a converter. So this allows me to get the first 16 channels from the console straight into the converter, and that's how I managed to use both things. And then the first 16 channels of outputs from my recording interface go to the console in case I want to do a little bit of an analog mix. I'm not doing analog mixes regularly and almost never, I would say. The way I work, that is hybrid, is what I recommend everybody does whenever they want to use hardware, is that you get the sound, you use the hardware, and then you print it and you go back into the box. In the box means inside of the computer. So I have 16 channels connected to the console. I'm only using 12 next door in the live room, so that leaves me some inputs available. The good thing about an analog console is that you have two inputs per channel. You have the microphone and then you have the line input. That allows me to have things connected from next door and things connected from the control room right here. So a couple of channels share the tie line next door and share some synths here. So if I want, for instance, 7 and 8, if I want to record some overheads for my drums, I could connect it to the 7 and 8 input on the tie line next door. And then if I come here to the control room, I can just flip a switch and I could use my vocoder synth in that same input, and I just press a button and that's it. So it's really practical. The downside of all of this, of having a permanent connection, is that you spend tons and tons and tons of money and time on cables. But I like to have permanent connections that allow me to relax and know that everything is connected and I don't have to waste time looking for cables or I'm plugging something in to plug in something else. I always recommend that you learn to solder, so you learn to make your own cables. That always makes everything cheaper, especially because here in Latin America it's really hard to get gear, really hard. You have no idea. If you're watching the channel from the States or whatever country, please leave me below because I want to know. You guys have no idea how hard it is to live in a Latin American country and to be able to access gear, because not only gear costs 3 times as much and studios here earn 3 times less, but also you don't have free shipping. So it's not like we don't have Amazon here in Argentina. I cannot buy something from Amazon and get it into my house. So one has to learn how to do things on your own. So that's actually quite good most of the time, because you learn something and you can make your own cables. So let's start with my preamps. The studio is going to be growing and growing and growing. I'm going towards a really pro audio direction. So I always think that I should do the studio tour in 5 months or so, but the studio is always growing, so I'd rather share with you how the studio is right now and tell you a bit of my plans for the future. So I have my Kemper amp for the guitar. I'll go into details of how I have it connected and further along in this video. I have my lunchbox from Quagliardi with 2 preamps. Quagliardi is a national brand from Argentina that make their own preamps and compressors and stuff. These preamps are based on the API 512, and I think they sound amazing, and I like that it even has a trim, so that makes it even more versatile. It has transformers in the input and in the output, which is great for saturating and getting that nice crispy sound. I use it a lot to mix as well, using the line inputs. Of course, it has DI, so I really recommend if you're looking for that kind of API sound. This is much cheaper and it's really, really good. I mean, it's up to par any day of the week. It delivers 60 dB of gain. Then I have my Kultrumm, that is a preamp, tube preamp based on the famous Altec 1566A. They were famously used in Motown studios. This is also an Argentinian manufacturer, so you can also get in contact with him. And he does very good Barry Mew kind of gear. And it gives you that instant 60s sound. I actually made a cover of Crossroads by Cream and only using 1 microphone. And it's really good for saturating, and it's also really good for having a clean sound. So for bass, it makes it fat and kind of distorted. You can actually go too far and it will get too distorted and you won't even realize it because it's so good. I went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. Down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. Then I have 2 DBX DSers. I actually got them like really cheap, like 10 years ago. I haven't used them that much. They're good, but now that I'll be getting more analog gear, mastering compressors and channel strips and really cool stuff, I'm probably going to use it much more. Then I have my Tech cassette deck, which is from the end of the 70s and it's really high quality, really good for mastering into cassette. So if any client asks me to do a mastering to cassette, or if anybody wants to restore some old cassettes and make them sound really good, I can use that. Also, I have the Furman protector for my gear, which is really useful, especially because in Latin America it gets really hot, so we have lots of power cuts or the tension goes down and we have to keep the gear safe. Then I have a Aphex oral exciter with big bottom. It's a harmonics exciter and it gives you like a bit of saturation. It can give you saturation in the lows and in the highs. It's really good for acoustic guitars. The other day I used it for some really nice acoustic guitars for a US client called Umran Syed, also a friend. He was doing a song that sounded very like Pink Floyd, so I decided to use the oral exciter for that track, and it really worked out. Then underneath that I have a really cool analog delay from the 70s. It's mono and it self-oscillates and distorts. It's really, really fucking cool. I like to use it like with the feedback to the max, and it starts oscillating, and then you move the time knob and it'll start sounding like a theremin. So it's really cool. Then underneath that I have my Korg tuner, which is really good and bright and blue, and it helps me tune instruments that are quite far away. So maybe I go to the other side of the control room and I can still see in the big screen if my instrument is in tune or not. Same for guitars, basses and stuff. So everything that comes out through the main outputs also goes to the tuner, so I don't have to set it up, it's always working. Then I have my Orion that I explained before. It's my recording interface, same as the Focusrite Clarett. Underneath that I have my patch bass, which I use the Behringer one for my balanced outputs and inputs. So actually I have it for my analog gear, and then I have from my Antelope, I only have from the 16th to the 24th channel. The rest goes straight to the console or straight to the gear. So that allows me to have 8 channels of movement in case I want to switch things in the moment, which is really cool. And I have the patch bass from the original console, the Tascam, which are unbalanced. So that only allows me to plug in things that are unbalanced, maybe some synths, maybe some guitars or something. I'm not using it that much, to be honest. Then I have my flavors from Tierra Audio, which is a Spanish brand that makes these boosters like in a small shape, which are really, really cool because they have different circuits. So some of them have like saturation, some of them have EQ, some of them just boost. So they have different transformers and things inside that makes it sound really, really interesting. I'm going to do a video soon about them. Check them out because they're not expensive and they'll really make the sound of your microphones much better. So this goes between your microphone and your preamp. So maybe for a dynamic like the SM7B or a Riven microphone, it's great because it lets you boost the signal and then work much more comfortably inside of your preamp without having to boost that much and keeping the noise floor as low as we can. I also have from our Argentinian brand, the same one, Quagliardi. I have some boosters called Q lifters that they boost around 25 dBs. I have to check that out. I'm not quite sure. But they're really good I have a podcast in my Spanish channel that I use the Vocaster microphones. They're quite similar to the SM7B, so it has a really low output. So I use the Q lifters to give it much more output and make them sound much better. I also have a bunch of DI boxes because synths, I don't understand why, even though they say that they have a line output, is extremely low level. So to be able to work comfortably and get the most out of a synth, it's usually recommendable to plug them into a DI box, which will allow you to use a microphone preamplifier and make it sound much bigger. So I have 2 of the cheapest passive radio ones. I think they are around $100 each. I then have 3 which sound really good, are really solid, and I think they're going to last for a lifetime. I then have 3 of the Behringer's 2-channel DI boxes, which are cheap. They are like $20 US, and the sound quality is good, but they might be a little bit fragile. So maybe for a studio connection is fine, or if you have to plug in too many things and you don't have such a big budget, it works. And then I have the color box from Quagliardi as well, which is a great DI box because it has 2 inputs. So it's stereo. It has transformers inside, so it makes it sound much nicer. It's active. And also, if you plug it the other way around, it works like a reamp box. So let's talk about my sound system. Everything is routed to this Nero from Audient. It's a really good monitor controller. So it allows me to have 3 different pairs of monitors, which I have 3, and an extra sub. I don't have one yet, but I hope I have one in the near future. This also allows me to do 4 different kind of monitor mixes and headphones for people. It has talkback, so it's really useful for having like a monitor central thing. So my speakers that I use the most, the Adam Audio S3XH, which are like the top level of them. They are really, really, really impressive. They are 3-way speakers. Then I have the Eva Audio SC205, which are excellent Riven tweeters as well speakers. They are 2-way, but the sound quality is superb. I really, really, really recommend them. They are really good. I also have the Adam Audio T8V, which are the cheapest ones in the line of Adam. And they're actually quite good if you are on a budget and you're looking for that Riven tweeter kind of sound. I think they are the cheapest you can find of that technology. My first pair of speakers were the Yamaha's HS5. Then I switched to the 8s, which I still have in my house for editing. And then I switched to the Eve Audio 205. And that was my entry to the Riven tweeter. And there was no turning back because you have those silky top end that you can really work on. And they are really nice and smooth, and you don't get like ear fatigued after a while. So I really, really recommend them. I'm also on the search for some kind of mix cube, kind of Aventone kind of thing, to have something different than what I already have, because actually these 3 pairs of speakers, they all sound fantastic. So I would like to have something that sounds different. Let's talk about microphones. What kind of microphones do I like and what do I use in my studio? So let's start with this beauty that is the Tierra Audio New 20s. It's an excellent microphone made by hand in Madrid in Spain, and it's an Clarett capsule. It sounds really, really good. It's very smooth. I already did a video you can check out on my channel. I also leave some links below. It has very smooth top end and a nice round bottom end as well. And it's really cool because, for instance, my voice has a bit of a resonance around 4K, so that allows me, but with that microphone, my voice sounds really smooth, so I really like it for that. It's really good for acoustic guitars, and you can actually, in the video I posted about it, you can check it out. I didn't use much EQ, I didn't use much processing. Everything is quite raw, and that's what I wanted to capture, and I really liked it. El alma, sus ojos, sus faros, son igual a mí. Then I have the Aston Spirit microphone. That is a multi-button polar microphone, which allows me to have it also not only in cardioid, like the microphone we mentioned before. Cardioid means that it will take sound from the front and a little bit from the sides. And sometimes if you are recording a live band, the instruments that come through the back, you kind of get like a weird bleed. So I usually like to, when I have those kind of situations, I use it in omnidirectional, and that makes it all sound much smoother around. And it doesn't have the proximity effect that a cardioid microphone has. So I really, really like recording with omnidirectional. Sometimes I use it for background vocals. It's really cool because it allows me to have like a, not such a in-your-face sound, but a much smoother sound. So sometimes it's good for that. It's hard to beat them for $500. I mean, I think they are the best for that price. And they actually compare very well to microphones that are above $1,000. So if you are on a budget and you want something good and you only have that amount of money to spend, I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend you go with this. The only thing is that maybe for an acoustic guitar it's quite nice, but since it has a large capsule, it gets a little bit fat, the sound. So sometimes for acoustic guitars, I like to use the NT3 from Rode, made in Australia. It's a Clarett capsule, but it's a medium-sized one, so it's actually not as thin and annoying sounding. So it's really nice for acoustic guitars. Also for vocals, it's really, really nice. So when I want something really defined with nice top end, I go with this. So this is my first microphone. This is a Supreme. I actually bought this when I was living in Sweden for 4 months when I was 18 years old, 12 years ago. So this was quite cheap and I used it a lot. It's quite scratched, but I actually use it nowadays for my kick out and sometimes room mics or something like that. It's not a bad microphone at all. It has a real condenser capsule, and so that quite a large diaphragm one as well. Then I have like 3 or 4 trusty 57s from Shure microphones, and this is a cardioid. They're around $100. They're really, really solid. I have the theory that if you cannot get a good sound with a 57, something wrong you're doing. Of course, I'm going to leave everything linked below so you can check them out. I think everybody knows about this microphone. It's not such a mystery, but it's really hard to beat. I mean, I've tried more expensive dynamic microphones, and this one kicks their ass. It's hard to get a better dynamic than this one. I also have the other microphone that is the 58 of Shure. That it's the same microphone but with an ice cream blob on top that filters the breath and the consonants of a vocal, which already having that thing makes it sound different. So yeah, that's like the most common microphone you can see in a live situation. Then I have like this ribbon microphone from Tierra Audio, the same guys from Madrid. And this is a kit you can actually build yourself. To be honest, I wasn't very successful. The microphone has an interesting sound. It works for weird things. But that's because I built it and I'm not a professional builder. Then I have a kit called Midnight Blues from Audio Technica for recording drums that consists of 4 dynamic microphones. They were my first kit that I bought because it was quite cheap, and I really enjoyed the microphones because they are quite small in size and they are solid, and I would be very comfortable taking them on tour and giving them a good bash because they won't break, and they sound pretty decent. I still use a kick drum microphone for the kick in. I also use one of the microphones for my vocoder, so yeah, I really enjoy them. And then I have a couple of weird microphones that I made myself. I have one made out of a headphone that is inside of a can, a tomato can. Then I have like a sub kick that a friend of mine made, homemade, that he put outside of the kick drum. And finally, I have some new microphones that are really cool, that are the Vocaster from Focusrite. They are podcast microphones, because here in the studio we also do podcasts. So yeah, and they are kind of similar to the SM7B from Shure as well. They are very good for talking voices, for people singing. It has like a curve, an EQ curve, that makes a vocal sound cut through much better. I recommend those as well. They're very good for podcasts. They are quite cheap. They come, I think, for like $200. You get the microphone and the headphones. So that's a really good deal. I strongly recommend it for podcast. And they go very well with like a key lifter from Quagliardi, or they have or using it with the flavors from Tierra audio. They are very good as well. So let's talk about headphones for a minute. I've had lots of experience with headphones. I like lots of different brands. I have lots of different brands. They all sound different. My main headphones nowadays are the Adam Audio SP5. They are great headphones. They are not cheap. I was very lucky to be traveling for 2 months in Europe, working and also mixing 2 albums while I was there. So it was really cool to have those headphones. They really went a long way, especially because I was so worried that leaving this studio I wouldn't be able to work okay. So I'm really happy with them. Then I have the Sennheiser HD280 Pro, that they are like around $100. And they are quite alright headphones. I mean, if you don't have, for that price range, they are quite good. I mean, they are good for field recording because they are very closed, and they have like an accentuated mid-range. So they're not great for mixing, but they're good for recording. Also have the Vocaster headphones from Focusrite, which are excellent. I mean, for the price, it's really hard to beat them because they close really well. They are really comfy. I'm very comfortable as well taking them to the streets and just listening to music. And they're very good for references because they don't fatigue your ear, and to be able to be recording and listening to a click track or something, they're really good, and really good for podcasts. That is what they created them for. And then I have like this really cheap Behringer headphones, but that I got them when I was first starting my recording career. I didn't have much money, so I had to do with what I had, and I wanted to record bands, so I got like 4 or 5 of these cheap headphones, and they are around $20. But they do the job. I mean, if you don't have anything else, just get them and use them because they work perfectly fine. I would never use them for mixing because they barely have any top end. But I mean, just for using them as headphones and a bit of reference and to have like an extra set in the studio, it never hurts anybody. I also had some other Sennheiser headphones, of the cheap ones, and they both broke, so I'm not even going to name them. So like I mentioned before, at the studio we also have a podcast studio where we have a table that we can fit in 4 different microphones. We have the wonderful Vocaster microphones from Focusrite that are great microphones for podcast, and we accompany them with the wonderful key lifters that are like it's like a 20 dB booster from Quagliardi Audio as well, an Argentinian brand. They are quite inexpensive. They make the sound quality improve a lot. So they are a great option for recording microphones for podcast and low output microphones like dynamics and ribbon microphones. They are active, so yep. I also have a Vocaster Studio that is a recording interface of Focusrite made for podcasts. That it's amazing. It's really, really good interface and it's really cheap. So, and I think it's really good not only for podcast because it allows you to have like automatic gain, but at the same time it allows you to record Bluetooth and different signals that makes it like really versatile. So I strongly recommend it, and it has some presets for the vocals that makes it sound really nice. So the way I have connected the control room to the live room, I have a snake tie line that goes from the console to the other room by a hole in the wall. I'm able to bring 12 microphones in, and I can also send 4 different headphone mixes. That's exactly what I need for this room. And also if I have to be able to see the other person, because I chose not to make a hole into the wall and to have a window, because that kind of destroys your acoustic treatment. So I decided to use a webcam so I can see the other person through my TV screen, and that works perfectly fine. So let's talk now about my lighting and my camera gear. I use to record this YouTube channel, I use the Sony a6400, which is a great vlogging camera. I'll leave a link in the description for you to check it out. It works perfectly fine. It has great autofocus that is really good for showing off different kind of gear. I have a main LED light that I'm going to link below, that it took me like 5 years to be able to get, but it was really worth the investment. It makes everything look much nicer. And I have these 2 photography kind of lamps that are very nice. They're nice for making this kind of mood. And I have lots of little LED, RGB kind of LED with a control remote. Very cheap ones. And they work great because I can actually connect like an extender and take them anywhere in the room, and they're great for filming. And then I have like a whole bunch of different adapters. For instance, I have for my camera, I have an adapter that goes to my microphone stand and allows me to record at higher heights and angle the camera. I really like that. Then I have this lapel mics from Zoom that I'm using right now. And they are, I think, under $200, maybe $150, something like that. They work really well because the battery lasts a long time. And the good thing is that it records straight to this device. You don't need an extra transmitter or anything. It's really fast and really good. So let's talk about acoustic treatment of the studio and what did I do. So I hired a professor that I had during the university, and now we are great friends. He's called Hernán Calvo. He's a great mixer as well and great producer. And he made me construct that wall you see behind me. And so I actually built it myself with help of my dad. And then I did the rest of the acoustic treatment. It's like a glass wool or something like that. And it's covered with fabric. I also have some bass traps made by hand. I made them myself, and they were really quite challenging to make because they are tuned to a specific frequency of my room. Then, for instance, in the live room, I have a window that is double, so I don't listen to what's happening in the streets. And I also covered the doors with the same acoustic treatment, and it made them much more solid and tough. So I like it a lot. So let's start with the beautiful synths. I have plenty of synths here at the studio, so I want to talk a little bit about them and what makes them special. So starting out, I have the Micro Freak here from Arturia. That is one of the most complete cheap synthesizers in the market, because I think it's around $300 or something like that, and it has so many types of synthesis that it's absolutely amazing. I really like it. Then we have the Arturia Drum Brute Impact that, as you notice, and I think I said it before, I'm one of Arturia's artists, so I have plenty of things of them. This is a drum machine that sounds amazing. It's completely analog, so it has, like, for each sound, it has a synthesizer inside of it, which is crazy. It has distortion, and it's really cool for syncing up with the computer. It sounds really good. So it's very good for doing like urban music. So you have like really good 808s, distorted ones. And you can also make electronic music or pop music. It's quite versatile. I really enjoy it. Then up here I have the Behringer Poly D. That is kind of a copy of the Mini Moog. I really don't care if it sounds like the Mini Moog or not, because actually, the only thing I care about is that it sounds good, and it sounds very good. It's very good for basses and leads. It has some things that the original unit doesn't have, like it has a chorus built in, it has distortion, it has a sequencer, and it has an arpeggiator, so that's really cool. Of course, it has MIDI connectivity with the USB, so that makes it like really versatile, and the possibility to use it as a paraphonic synthesizer. Then we have the Cobalt 8 from Model Electronics. There is a brand that makes digital synthesizers that are amazing because they have lots of modulation capacities. And I actually worked with this brand and I developed like a pack of presets that are really cool that if you have the synth, you can download for free. And I will put that in the description. And I made some really cool electric piano that sounds like the Rhodes and some kind of brass kind of sounds as well. Then we have the Korg MS-20 Mini. It's a great synth. I think it has one of the best filters on the market by far. I mean, it really like roars and it's a really aggressive filter, but it's a bit noisy. That's what I would say. Like the oscillators are a bit noisy. Then we have the Juno Boutique from Roland. It's like the Juno, but size mini, and it sounds really good. The only thing I don't like is the connectivity. They use mini plugs instead of using a standard TRS plug. So yeah, I'm not quite a big fan of that, but it sounds really good and it's not that expensive. So if you want like a real Juno analog thing, this is a good way to go. Then we have the TD3 from Behringer. It's like the 303 from Roland. It has the characteristic of having like that resonant sound from acid house. Then we have the Keystep Pro from Arturia. It's a very good MIDI controller that allows you to have 4 different sequences to go into different synths. So that's really powerful. So for instance, I have it connected to the drum brute, to the Juno, to the Korg MS-20. And the good thing about, for instance, using it with the Korg is that I'm able to use the ARP feature that actually the Korg doesn't have it. So it makes it like a much better synth to be able to accompany it with a Keystep Pro, for instance. If we move this way, we have the Arturia Mini Freak. That is a synthesizer that they released last year. It's really cool. The difference with the Micro Freak is that it has 6 voices instead of 4. It has a stereo output instead of being mono, so it has digital effects. It comes with a plugin to be able to control it and pass presets from one place to the other. It also has like a real normal keyboard. It's really solid. It's really nice, and it's very similar to the Micro Freak, but it has this kind of features that makes it a bit more complete. Then up here we have the vocoder from Behringer. It's the BC340 with its microphone. It's actually another microphone. This has like 3 sounds only, but it's really good. It sounds exactly as the original unit from the 70s from Roland, and I actually thought that I wasn't going to use it that much. But in the end, I'm using it all the time. Not only for its vocoder sounds, I think it has the best vocoder ever, period. I mean, there's no discussion about it. And it's very easy to use. And then it has like strings and human voice. The human voice, you can hear it like in the beginning of Levitating from Dua Lipa. It's that sound, and it's exactly the same. Then we have the Korg M1, classic synth from '89. I think 89, 90. It's quite a vintage digital keyboard that sounds amazing. I absolutely love it. It has lots of famous presets. Lots of famous bands use this sound. House music was invented with this. Then you have presets that Depeche Mode used. You have presets from Seinfeld. You have a whole bunch of things. Then this is my absolute treasure. I mean, this is the Arturia Polybrute. I absolutely love it. It's a completely analog synth, except for its effects, and it's also digitally controlled, so you can control it with a plugin. But it sounds so good, and it's so expressive, and the performance that you get from it, it's so natural. You have like different controllers, like this wooden ribbon that is amazing, and you have this that looks like something you could hold your cell phone with. But no, it's actually to modulate your sound and have lots of different features. I love it. And one thing I was forgetting is that here I have stuck with the vocoder, I also have a talk box. Quite similar sound, but not really. So you have both options if you want to use them at the studio, or if you hire our services from another country, you can ask for us to use this, of course. So let's now check out the guitars and basses. So let's have a little look at the electric guitars and basses that are here at the studio. I want to start with this guitar that is quite a rare guitar that they make here in Argentina. It's called a SZ guitar. In Spanish you call it SZ. And it's a really good constructed guitar. It has an included booster and it sounds freaking amazing. It has P90 pickups and it's one of my go-to guitars, especially because of the booster. You can really dial it in and make the gear and the amp sound much better. Then we have this Les Paul Custom of 3 microphones with Seymour Duncan microphones. This one is one that I actually made myself when I was 17. I did a course to become a luthier, and then I became a producer. And actually this took like 10 months to build. I had to even do the Gibson. That took me like 20 hours because this was originally for a client. And then I bought it back from him, which I'm very happy. Because I only made 2 guitars, and this is the other guitar I made. And this one I made it when I was 16. And it's a Telecaster with 24 frets and DiMarzio pickups. And it has like this, like lots of little curves for like the tummy and for it to be much more comfy. Then we have the SG from Epiphone from the 90s, Japanese. It's a very comfortable guitar and I like the look of it, but I'm not a big fan of the microphones, so I don't use it very much. I actually exchanged it for some gear, so yeah. And then recently, like a year ago, I purchased this Mexican Strat from Fender. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. Then I have this Allen Woody Epiphone bass. It's a semi-hollow. And it sounds really nice. I mean, it's good for having like that kind of Hofner sound, but at the same time, it's really good for distorting and having like a stoner kind of sound. Kind of Queens of Stone Age or something like that. Sounds really good on this kind of thing. Then over here, I have my 89 Japanese Tele from Fender as well. It's quite road worn. It wasn't originally in this color. I think it was black and then they repainted it. But I love guitars in this state. I love them. Then I have this beautiful Gibson Flying B. I love this one because it has like real wood and it's really comfy. So it's a great guitar. It's kind of a bluesy Flying B, more for playing like Hendrix, not so much for playing metal. Finally, I have this beautiful Yamaha acoustic guitar from the beginning of the 80s, maybe 81. It sounds really good for finger picking and playing old style folk music. Yamahas from those days, I mean, if you can find them, get them because they are really good for recording. And then I have a couple of more guitars, but some of them are at my house and some of them I don't use anymore. They are like from my childhood, so yeah. These ones are the ones I use the most for recording. This is a new day. Yesterday we were recording all day and then we ran out of batteries and memory, so we had to take a break and that kind of slowed everything down. Now we are back. Like you can see, change of wardrobe. I'm going to talk a little bit about guitars, of how I record them, since I just showed you my main guitars for recording. I normally use my Kemper. I'm a big fan of real amps, but I work so fast and I need sometimes to do lots of different sessions in one day that setting up a real amp with the microphone and stuff might take too long. So I actually like the idea of a Kemper that you have it next to you. You can open the app and control it, and you can save your presets. You can actually model different amps. You can, if you don't like one sound, you can just jump to another amp and change settings, which is great. And I have actually the foot controller for it, which is lovely. It has loop. It has lots of different features that makes it great if you want to take it to a live situation or if you want to have a bit more of a performance ability. Then I have my lovely Snazzy effects from Erica Synth. Erica Synth is a brand that makes actually synths, and they have this snazzy effects that are very useful for guitars, synths, drum machines, and whatever you want to pass through them. and they are really psychedelic. You can actually watch a video I made of it. They are one of my favorite pedals ever because they are so quirky that you cannot find those sounds anywhere else. And I don't know, it just sounds so alive. I love them a lot. You should definitely check them out if you have the chance, because they're not easy to find, or they're not very well known as they should be, but yeah, they're very, very good. And now let's talk a little bit about the instruments and the live room next door. So there's a live room that has like the same size as the control room, that is connected with a tie line, and I have a drum kit there where I can record and play drums for sessions, people of other countries that send me sessions. And also if there's somebody here in town, they can bring their own drum kit, of course. We can use a drum doctor. I have a real upright piano from beginnings of like the 1900s, so it's over 100 years old. It sounds beautiful. It has like this really nice reverb and decay that is really gorgeous. It's a real treat to have something like that in the room. I have a cello as well. I studied cello for like 2 years. I love orchestral instruments, even though I work with all kinds of genres. Lately I've been working a lot with urban music and beats and pop, rock as well. But I do enjoy a lot the possibility to work with acoustic instruments. I do lots of soundtracks for movies and TV shows and jingles. So I'm always jumping from one genre to the next, which is a lot of fun. And also one of the cool things about the way this studio is set up is that it's set up for like a modern project. So the conventional way of making records was going to like a big studio with a huge console. We have a console here too, but huge console, and you would have to pay lots of different people. A drum doctor, you had to rent instruments because normally recording studios don't have instruments of their own. So I kind of planned my studio to be different. I wanted to be a production studio. So we have like top quality audio gear, but we also have like top quality instruments, and everything is like included in whatever we do. So I like to, whatever project I have, I know that I have the tools to do whatever I need to get it from A to B, and I don't have to go out renting stuff, which I sometimes do if the artist is interested in. But one of the main things we do is, like, since the quarantine started, lots of people around the world started recording in their own home studio and making the demos. And I think that is wonderful because that allows like a connectivity between different countries. And I get lots of clients from not only different provinces here in Argentina, but I get clients from Latin America, from Central America, from North America, from Sweden, from Spain, from Italy. So there's like this whole cultural interchange that I absolutely love. So it allows us to actually be very competitive, and we can offer like top quality mixes, mastering, production, and have it a bit cheaper than if the studio was located in the States or in London. So this is like a very big thing that I was working to make this studio as functional as possible, and to be able to work with people all around the world, and for them to be able to rent our services for reamping guitars, for mixing, for mastering, for making beats, instrumentals, backing vocals, jingles, soundtracks. I mean, whatever you need, this is kind of covered here in the studio. So if you're ever interested, there's information about us in the description of the video. I just want to thank you for watching all the way through, and leave me a comment. Let me know who you are, where you're watching from. I would love to get to know you and have you as part of this community. I'm always trying to teach at the same time as I produce and carry on. I believe that if one is generous with the knowledge, the results are always better. The song sounds better, I sound better, you sound better, and everybody gets benefit out of it, even though we might never meet in person. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll leave links with everything I mentioned before. And also there are some videos I already made about some specific gear that you can go and check out. And it's been lovely having you. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.